Hi, my name is Emeka Warrior and welcome to Growth is Personal. Each week, I share insights and strategies that will equip you to accelerate your personal and professional growth and bring you conversations that will empower you to thrive in life, career, and business. All right, welcome once again to Growth is Personal podcast, your number one podcast for personal growth and development. Thank you for coming back each week to listen, learn, and grow. For those of us watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on YouTube, please ensure that you follow or also make sure that you rate the podcast. And of course, you listen on Spotify or Apple. Please also give us a rating. That would help our podcast get more visibility. And thank you for sharing the podcast, for listening, and being a part of our podcast community. Today, we have a phenomenal guest. I can't wait to jump right into the conversation because I've followed him for the few weeks or months that I've observed him from afar. And I can tell that it's going to be a conversation that is going to be a deep one. I envisage that. Robert Althuis is a spiritual coach. This is the first time we're going to be having a spiritual coach, guys, in this podcast. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. As a keynote speaker and the founder of Sacred Wealth Collective, a mindfulness organization dedicated to embedding love plus truth as foundational spiritual principles for an awakened humanity rising to its full potential. A profound spiritual awakening experience in 2015 activated his intuitive gift and claircognizance and clairsentience. This is Robert's first fully channeled work. And that's referred to his book, Love and Truth. We'll have that on the podcast note as well for you to get a copy. A spiritual teacher, Robert is both a celestial philosopher and a renegade real-world change agent. A certified medium, he holds an MBA from Columbia Business School and was once a Fortune 100 executive and successful real estate and private equity entrepreneur. Without further ado, let's welcome Robert to the show. Robert, thank you for being a part of this podcast. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Well, listen, thank you for the invitation, Emeka. This is, this is going to be a great conversation. I can already tell because we had a couple of minutes before the call, before we go live to connect, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I want to note one thing, though. For any listeners that kind of dialed in, like, spiritual coach, what the heck am I going to do with this guy? I'm actually deeply, my background is business, big business, right? I have a Columbia business degree. I was a top 1% at GE. I had my own company in private equity and venture funds. And so, I actually am a spiritual mentor, but I specialize and very, specifically, I coach CEOs, entrepreneurs, game changers, visionaries, because I'm a firm believer that when spirituality kind of fuses with those people that are creating the world, which is really what business does, then we can create beautiful things in this world. So this is very relevant for anybody that is an entrepreneur or business, because spirituality is not some lofty thing. This is why I say I'm a real world change agent, because I'm only interested in that form of spirituality that actually changes, and makes our world a more beautiful world. Otherwise, it's just lofty stuff with fancy words, but it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, that is a good way to start the conversation, because when I saw the spiritual side of things, and I've listened to some of your conversations, and I can tell that it's a deep one, but I think it's one that is relevant today, because you know how the world is fast paced, everyone is busy, no one is really tapping into, because I believe you're a spirit being, and no one is really tapping into their being on how to to approach the world, right? People are looking at outward to do things. They're looking at external help or external device or something to make them find meaning in life. But I believe that it has to come from within, to create the life that you want, the life that you desire, the change you want to see happen in the world. it comes from in within. So I'm really, really passionate about this conversation.
Beautiful.
Let's go right in, Robert. What is your personal journey? You know, you talk a lot about love and truth. What is your personal journey with that?
Well, you know, like I mentioned to you, I grew up in Holland. I was 21 when I left. I kind of went backpacking around the world. I sailed yachts. I was a kind of a journeyman tennis pro for a few years. And then I ended up in the States around my mid-20s, I guess. And I went into real estate. And I was pretty good at it, actually. And I had a fortunate circumstance that this company was growing and the market was really good. I went to night school and I put myself through night school and got really good grades. Then I got into Columbia Business School. You know, I was really proud of that at the time, because to me, that was like, you know, I'm really good at getting places now. Because I came here to the States with $70 in a duffel bag. And so, you know, this was sort of a self-made story. Although I come from a very, you know, very good background in Holland. So I don't come from poverty or the wrong side of the tracks. But, you know, my father, when I started traveling around the world, he said, "You're on your own, brother. Go figure it out. You're not on my payroll anymore." And so I did. And then I went to Columbia Business School. I got recruited by GE, which at the time was still a very prestigious company. It's kind of diminished a little bit over the years, but and then I just pursued that with a vengeance. I mean, I was just so driven, and you know, I worked hard, and you know, and I got places, and I got some lucky breaks. I had some people that saw some potential in me, and so they pulled me up into the organization. And by I think around 34 or 35, I was top 1% of GE, which at the time was 320,000 people. So I was in the top 3,000 people or so in GE. And then in 2009, the financial crisis happened, 2008-9, and you know, GE Capital, the regulators came in, so I went through that chaos and mayhem of that GE Capital having to shrink. You know, my unit shrunk, and then I saw an opportunity to buy out a little asset, a little orphan asset, so to speak, and that got me into business for myself with a partner in Texas, and we build airport infrastructure around the world. So big, you know, think about big cargo buildings and hangars and just all this kind of real estate that you would see on an airport. And we went out and got a lot of success in Latin America. We built some really big projects there. And around 2015, my private equity partners, my pension fund partners, wanted to sell. They wanted to roll over their fund. And so I got a big cash out. And then I found myself in early 2015, I had everything. I'd reached this proverbial mountain peak that I had set out for myself. I was in my early 40s, and now I had all the money, and I had the house in the oceanfront community, and I had the perfect wife, perfect kids. I had the perfect cars and vacations, and it was kind of an aha moment for me, because I thought that when I would get there, I would feel complete. I would be whole. I would be happy. I would be joyful. And really what I found is that I was miserable. I was empty. I was disillusioned, actually, in this whole American dream that was sold to me. And not that it's bad of America, but, you know, the proverbial American dream, it didn't provide that inner fulfillment. And I was like, well, if this is not it, then what is? And so this started, you know, in hindsight, I now see that was an awakening moment for me. A profound awakening. My claircognizance and sentience came online, but at the time I had no idea what any of this was. I felt depressed. I felt low. I felt, you know, and I had become a shark because I swam with the sharks. I was in the upper echelons of business, and there's a lot of unsavory stuff that happens in those regions of business. And you know, big airport projects and governments and World Banks and IMFs and all kinds of different things involved. And I was a cog in that machinery. And I had slowly but surely kind of sold my soul, because you know, money, power, greed, corruption, you know, all of it kind of found its way into my world and my inner world. And so I had a lot of reconciliation to do inside of me. And so that was the awakening moment that started this path of, well, if it's not about this, then what is life really about? What is the meaning of all this stuff? Why are we here? You know, and so I started asking some of these really big questions. And even the question like, who am I? What am I? you know, and there's got to be more to life than moving decimals around on a spreadsheet and making a bunch of money for pension funds and loading my pockets in the meantime. Not that there's anything wrong with business per se, or making a lot of money, or having abundance, because I got nothing against any of those things. But the way I did it was for the wrong reasons. And so, you know, this was kind of the process I went through. Eventually, I had a really monumental year in 2017. My father passed away. I went through a divorce, and I had a hurricane that wiped out a business. And now all that stuff that I accumulated basically wiped out, or my ex-wife had it. And I found myself at the end of that year literally broken, fallen from grace. I didn't have the balance sheet anymore. I was in deep, deep financial trouble with this business that got wiped out, and insurance didn't pay out. And it was a beautiful drama if you look back at it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because the universe stripping me naked like that actually was the medicine I needed. And I call these crises, catastrophes, and calamities that show up in all of our lives, right? I call these divine gifts wrapped in sandpaper. They are absolutely horrendous to move through, but usually these are the things that are pivotal moments in our life where we get a choice to either rise to the next level, because it's always an invitation to rise within ourselves to another level, or do we succumb to this and, you know, either fall away in self-destruction or pity or victimhood or whatever it might be. And, you know, this could be a heartbreak, a divorce, the loss of a job, a business that goes bankrupt, you know, a pandemic that shuts down your, you know, you lose all your money. It doesn't matter what it is, because a crisis is a crisis. You know, for one, it's a broken heart. For another one, it's a lost job. It doesn't matter what it is.
Wow. So, you know, sometimes when you see, you know, you look at people, you don't see the behind the scenes. And thank you for sharing that. But I want to also go into the love and truth, because I believe that is important in today's world. But people see, you know, that sometimes if you love people, telling them the truth might hurt, right? Like there are two separate concepts, right? So how do we then
yes and no, and I'll answer that question. But you know, the first book I wrote was actually called Never Enoughitis, because it's never effing enough. That was really the disease I suffered from, and most of the world suffers from, because, you know, we achieve something and then we move the goalpost. And so we think, well, if I get there, I'll be happy. But then we move the goalpost, right? And so there's Never Enoughitis was a book that I wrote after 2017 to basically the arc of my story, up the mountain, down the mountain, and how do I get out of this, and reframe really the way I look at life. Now, Love and Truth is my new book. I channeled that last year, and then I went through the whole editing process. And what you're touching on is a really interesting thing, and we have to kind of peel a few things apart if to really make sense out of that. The first thing I got to pull apart is love. And I do this in the second chapter, actually. And, you know, there's two, you know, major kind of categories of love, so to speak. One is what I refer in my book as love, the emotion. And one is love, the energy. Now, what is love, the emotion? Love, the emotion is what most people know, but it's perishable and it has exclusion in it. So I love my people, but I hate those people, right? I love you today, but tomorrow I'll hire a divorce attorney and I'm going to, like, you know, annihilate you whichever way I can. And so within this love, the emotion, it's very fickle. And, you know, that's mostly what people assume love is. Now, love, the energy, is completely different. That is kind of this unconditional love, although I don't like using that word because I think it's overused and people don't really understand what it is. They interchange that with love, the emotion. And so, you know, love, the energy, is this kind of exalted form of love that, you know, even when you say mean things to me and you say nasty stuff, or you're doing, you know, in some way you detriment me, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to have compassion for you because I see where those things are coming from. And hurt people hurt people.
That's right.
It's just as simple as that. And so whenever someone shows up in an ugly way, and this goes all the way up to some of these politicians and world leaders that we have that you know, can't get out themselves out of having wars, invading countries, and you know, creating havoc and destruction. Hurt people, right? And so when you can see beyond that, you can actually still love that person. And that is love, the energy. It's a very exalted form of love. It's a much stronger form of love. Now let's talk a little bit about truth, and then I'll combine these two, right? So truth is really the opposite of falsehood. Now, even a little white lie is a falsehood, right? But there's a big difference in truth that we have to realize. And I described this in the first chapter, which is universal truth, which is independent of your or my perception. Now, everything you and I think of as truth that we determine is a relative truth, because it's never absolute truth. You and I can look at the same situation and we'll have a different perception. Now, both of them are actually right, because there are relative truth. Now, where does the relative truth come from? It comes from your entire lived experience here in the world. Because from the moment you're born, you know, you accumulate all these experiences, and your mind is just interpreting what it means, because it's a meaning-making machine. And you accumulate 20, 30, 40, 50 years of data in your subconscious mind, right? And that's the prism through which you see life. And so your truth, what you see in reality, is relative to that experience, because that's what your mind is benchmarking. Now, absolute truth is, you know, let's call it God's truth, or a creator's truth, or natural law. And that's completely different, because that's independent of perception. That's independent of time, geography. You know, it holds true across all timelines. So let me show you a universal truth. So if you go to all ancient wisdom traditions, Christianity, you know, the Vedic traditions, Taoism, you know, the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, it doesn't matter what faith you pick, even the indigenous cultures, all of them have a version of the golden rule. Do unto others as you wish to be done unto you. Now, I can tell that golden rule to my 5-year-old, and he will 100% get that. We might not be able to live that way, right? That's, you know, we need to do some spiritual maturity to really grow into that. But it's an absolute truth. There's nothing philosophically you could argue that is wrong, or that doesn't work. Because we know it works. We know actually that life works that way. We know actually, you know, some other truths. We know, and this is, you know, it's in my introduction. We know that whenever we do anything with love, right, either create it, or encircle it, or bestow it, or, you know, marinate it in it, whatever it is, if it's from love, it will inevitably heal, grow, nurture, harmonize, create unity, regenerate, flower, blossom. We know this. That's an absolute truth. And we know when it comes from a negative emotion, whether that's anger or hate or envy or jealousy or whatever, what does that create? It never creates anything beautiful.
Yeah.
That energy does not create anything of beauty. Now, something of beauty, creating a beautiful business is something of beauty. Creating a beautiful relationship, a friendship, being kind to the cashier, even though you might be in a bad mood. You know, I mean, that creates beauty because it harmonizes. Now, this is kind of the condensed version of Love and Truth, because we know all these things, and I talk about these things in my book, and I even explain that the quantum physicists like Einstein and David Bohm and Niels Bohr, they're talking about the same stuff as the mystics in Vedic ancient wisdom traditions did 7,000 years ago. They're just calling it something different. The mystics in Vedic philosophy called it Brahman, and Einstein calls it the quantum field. But when they describe the quantum field and Brahman, it's the exact same thing. Now, I can go to Althuis and tell you how he described it, and I can talk even about how it's described in the Bible and how Allah and the Jewish faith how great spirit you are to the universe, which is central core to the ancient wisdom traditions and all the indigenous cultures. And so everything points at this same thing. We're all connected. We are all made out of love, and we all need love. We all need to be seen. We all need to be heard. And everything is sacred.
So love leads to truth.
100%, and the other way around too. So let's take an example. You know, let's say you're in a friendship and there's something that's bothering you with the other person, but you decide not to say it because you don't want to hurt their feelings. You don't want to be rude, or, you know, whatever social conditioning you have around this, right? We kind of shut up. Well, first of all, everything is energetic and vibrational in nature. And so people actually feel that, right? Think about it in your relationship. You're married, right?
Yeah.
All right. So think about it in your relationship. Something is bothering you, but you don't want to say it. Now, eventually, she feels that, right?
Yes. Yes.
And she's going to be picking at you. Like, Amika, what's going on? Why, you know, is something wrong? You know, because she feels the energy. It's a vibration. And so you not speaking your truth, you are actually causing more damage. Because she's probably now thinking, did I do something wrong? Does he not love me anymore? Is he maybe in love with someone else? You know, God knows where our minds go, right? Where if you would have just said, like, you know, you did this the other day and you've done this a few times before, and I don't know why, but it's just a pet peeve, you know, I wish you could just not do that. And she would have maybe in love said, oh, of course, I didn't even know that bothered you. Now, I could give you 100,000 examples of these things. Because when you negotiate in business, and I've done this many times, and I have an information advantage, and I take advantage of that, I abuse my power. Do you think that other person is going to feel that?
It's going to feel that.
Do you think when I hire someone and I know they're desperate and I offer them less salary than maybe they're worth, you think that person is going to feel that? When I negotiate with something, and in any situation where I abuse my power, my negotiation power, my whatever, you think that person feels it? 100%. Every person feels. Now, they might not have the conscious spiritual maturity to actually really understand what's going on, but they feel. Because everybody feels. And what happens when people feel disenfranchised? When people feel screwed? When people feel, excuse my French, fucked in life? You know what you get? You get gang looting in retail stores. You get riots. You get all these things we see in society today. Because they feel, they don't know exactly how it's happening. They don't have a perfect sense of how all the smart people are orchestrating all this stuff. But they know the system is screwing them. And so they feel that. And how does that come out? Because they're at low vibrations themselves. It comes out as violence. It comes out as anger. Wanting to upset the system, destroy the system. All these things we're seeing in society across the world is because people feel intuitively that the system is rigged. Now, why is the system rigged? Because at the top of the pyramid, there's an abuse of power. And this is not about someone being able to have $1 billion or not. That's not the thing. The system is rigged. And this is, you know, this gets into neoclassical capitalism, which has certain elemental flaws, which get corrected in regenerative capitalism, which goes by the laws of nature. Because in neoclassical capitalism, which our whole Western society is based on, we are talking about a theory. This isn't real life. This is a theory that we go by. And actually, the inventor of GDP said this is a horrendous measure of actual human well-being. Yet, what do we use to benchmark a country's prosperity by? GDP. Now, are people healthy? Are people happy? Are people, do they feel, do they feel protected? Do they feel safe? Do they feel it's a fair playing field, a level playing field? No. Because we wouldn't be seeing what we see in the world if that was the case.
So I want to take you on this. Now, with that in this same conversation, I wanted to talk about, so for those who feel disenfranchised, who feel that energy, and they're probably taking it in a different light, either by not giving their best at work, or not, not living through their full potential because of how can they flip that script around? And because my focus is on how they can take responsibility.
That's a perfect question. I actually love that question. And this is really the essence of my book and the essence of all the spirituality that I talk about. Because there's a really interesting phenomenon. Of course, we all live in this reality called the world, or you can call it the matrix or whatever, right? These are just linguistic labels. I don't care what you call it. 3D, matrix, reality, the world, whatever. Now, that is a co-created reality. We are not creating that by ourselves. We have 8 billion painters basically painting on that canvas every day, right? Now, at the same time, we have 100% control over our expression onto that canvas of all our creation. It's actually the only thing we have control over, because we literally have no control. I have no control over what you think.
That's right.
I can maybe try to influence it, but I don't control what you think. I don't control what you do. You cannot control any other person. Now, what you can control is inside of you, your inner world. You can control your perception of the world. You can control the beliefs you hold about the world. But you have to do one thing, which is a major spiritual threshold you have to cross over. And it's very, very difficult for a lot of people, because you have to take 100% accountability and responsibility for your entire life, even though part of that is co-created by other people. Because the universe is always just mirroring back life to you, right? But you, unless you can say, I've created all this, you don't have any power to change it. Because if you say, well, it's because of them and it's unfair and the playing field is not level and all that, you have just abdicated all your power. You're basically saying you're a leaf in the wind. You're a rudderless boat in the ocean, just floating with the current. You have just abdicated all your power. And that is actually not the truth. The truth is you have enormous power. Because if someone does something damaging to you or hurts you or insults you, you have a choice how you respond to that.
That's right.
You have a respond, whether you dismiss that thought or that you say, oh, that must be right. So if someone says, you're a useless this or that, you have a ability to say, no, I'm not. I have worth. I am valuable. So I'm going to dismiss that opinion. It's just an opinion of another person, right? Or you can say, I'm being hated, I'm being discriminated, I'm being all these things, and maybe you are, but you can still dismiss it and say, that's not my worth. I know I'm a creator. I know I'm powerful, and I will not let anybody squat in my mental real estate. I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do. I accept that life is not always going to go my way, and there's challenges and obstacles, and all of that is just for me to get a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more courageous, because I know where I'm going, and I am not going to take this negativity from other people and accept that as my reality. I'm going to dismiss it. Now, that is stepping into your power. And as soon as you believe you can do something, the how will unfold for you, because this is actually how the universe works. The moment you decide, this is where I'm going, I don't know, you don't need to know how to get there. Not yet. It will reveal itself. Because the moment you make a decision, like this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm committed to, then providence moves too. And providence is, we move the small wheels and the universe moves the big wheels. And suddenly, you know, the right people show up. The right opportunities show up. Circumstances arrange themselves in some miraculous way that suddenly, you know, it starts to move forward. And you could have never guessed how all of that happened, but you can actually look at your own life and you will find it has always been that way. And only when you yourself doubt, which leads to procrastination, right? Or you worry about it, or you have fear about it, you don't dare to move forward, then nothing seems to show up. Nothing seems to come in. And so this is how powerful we are. We create, in this sense, we create our own reality. We create our own success. We chart our own course, independent of what everything the world is doing. And yeah, we have to navigate this maze called the outside world, right? And there's certain things that work well in the outside world, and certain things don't. If you never pay your bills in the outside world, that doesn't work so well. If you religiously pay all your bills on time, right, which was one of my things, God, you know, thank God I did. You know, when I got wiped out by a hurricane, I had people helping me left and right because I had always honored the bills I paid. Now, if I would have been a shoddy payer, if I would have never done that, nobody would have stood up. And so for me, I'm very thankful for it. But I also know that in some way I created that. If you are always helpful to other people, if you always do the right thing, if you're fair in business, right? This comes back because people are going to want to help you. They're going to give you more business. They're going to want to do more things with you. The next time there's an opportunity, hey, we need a person. Hey, let's call Amika. Maybe he can get involved in this, right? Now, if you've done a couple of fast ones before, you think you're going to get that call? Right? It's all connected.
Wow. And this is the real mastering the game of life. Like what you just shared in 50 seconds is real master, because you started by saying that, you know, not making a decision not to take that energy, no matter what they bring to you, making a decision to say, this is how I want to create my life. This is how I want to do, you know, the things that I want to do, not because someone else did something negative to me, but that is how I want to do that. And then take action. And by being also sowing, like giving, helping, because you know in return, because what happens is, because I've been treated this way, then I'm going to be giving 20%.
I think about this, and I'll give you an example because this is really easy for people to relate to. Because we all have small little mushy hearts, right? So now we're in a marriage or in some love relationship. And, you know, our partner does something that hurts us. Now, our instinctual reaction is to shut down, to withdraw our love. This is love, the emotion, right? It withdraws. It just goes cold. Now, what happened to another person when you go cold? They go cold, right? Now, if you had the capacity, and we can all cultivate this capacity, to witness your heart closing in that moment and say, oh, okay, yeah, I know that happens when I get hurt. But I can override this. I can override this, and I can express to my partner that I profess to love, to say like, hey, you know, I love you, but this really hurt me. Can we talk about this? Now, if you're in a mutual loving relationship, what's that going to do? That's going to open up the other person. right?
Yeah.
And now you can have a discussion at an entirely different level. But that closing of your heart, that turning your back to someone, shuts them down, and that can really spiral down to a whole marriage dissolving, because we're just constantly shutting each other out because we got these mushy hearts that just can't deal with the pain. We can't step into it. Now think about having you have an employee, or you have someone that you work with, or a business partner, or a vendor, and there's a dispute. There's something that is off, right? Now, what if you go to that person and you sit down, and rather than just rattle off all the shit that's wrong with him, you say, hey, I feel there's a disturbance and it bothers me. My intention is for this conversation is to figure this out so we can get this harmonized. Now, you start any conversation like that, at least that person will maybe crack open just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And now you can be masterful and just really lean into that. And maybe ask the other person, before you spit all your opinions on it, all your perceptions, maybe you just ask first, what do you think is going on? What's alive in you? Because we think that we know what other people think. And we don't know shit. Usually, we first start with the barrage of everything that's wrong with the other person, and it's just our perception. What if we misread the situation? Maybe that's not at all what's going on. Maybe they're not a lousy employee that it's just, cutting corners and stuff. Maybe they just heard that their father has cancer and they're like, devastated. Now, would that change your perception of someone? Of the situation? Would you now say, hey, how can we work with you best? How can we support you in this? Okay, we still need you to do some work, but how can we make this easier for you? Where can we help? Where can we contribute? It's a completely different conversation. Now that's leadership, right?
Yeah.
To have empathy first. And to put your own opinions and all this stuff aside and first ask questions. So what's going on with you? How are you seeing this? I am negotiating a deal right now. And I asked this buyer, I'm the seller in this. And you go through this negotiation, and I asked them, what is most important to you? And we had a couple of conversations. And at first, they don't really want to show their cards. I said, well, I'll go first. This is what's really important to me in this deal. These are like really big points for me. But there's some other points where I can probably give a little bit, not the most important to me. I said, what's really important to you? And so we ended up having this very open conversation. And it became very almost effortless. Yeah, and we still, at one point, you get to a point where you both have to compromise. Nobody's ever going to get everything they want. But that's business, right? Do you ever get everything you want? Well, usually when you get everything you want, the other person doesn't feel so good about that deal. I can promise you. I've been doing business for 30 years. And I've walked away sometimes thumping myself on my chest. Whoa, man, I really, really, really nailed that one. No, I didn't. Because it will inevitably come back at some point. Because it wasn't in harmony. Now, harmony doesn't mean that everything is equal. Because sometimes someone has a better negotiation position than someone else. But there's a harmonizing point where both people can walk away saying, okay, that was a fair deal. And there's also a disbalance where that harmony is disharmonized, right? Where one person walks away feeling shafted. Now, this is in relationship, this is in friendships, this is in everything in life. Because everything in this universe operates on the principle of harmony. When we are in harmony with everything around us, we will have very little friction in our life. So when friction shows up in your life, it's okay, I'm not in harmony with my environment. I'm not in harmony with this person.
That's
now,
right.
maybe the answer is, okay, this person maybe should not be in my inner circle. Because maybe we see life our views on life are too diverse. I can still love you, but you're going to be in my outer circle. because you don't need to have everybody in your inner circle, right?
Yeah.
But in your inner circle, you really, one of your big jobs is to harmonize, to be a harmonizing force at all times.
Wow. Wow.
If you want your life to be with less friction, that is. If you love to fight all day and be, you know, dragging through the mud everywhere, and, you know, if you get a kick out of that, that's really your ego getting a kick out of it. That's not your heart, by the way.
That's right.
But I think most people will say, you know, yeah, I would love for my life to be a little bit less friction. That actually sounds pretty nice. That sounds actually more peaceful than how it sometimes, you know, shows up for me.
Wow. Let's talk about vulnerability. I think this leads into that part, because I think the reason why a lot of people today do not show up for their lives or show up for whatever it is that they've been called to do is this thing about not being vulnerable, right? It's often seen as something that people don't get comfortable with, right? So how can we embrace this aspect?
I love that, actually, and this is a powerful one, a great question. So we have this beautiful expression in Dutch, and it's very powerful in relationship to this. And this expression is, you cannot kick in an open door. So when you protect your heart, you put a big old moat around it and an armored door, you are inviting that door to be violated. You are actually vulnerable, you know, when you have that moat around you. Now, I'm going to take you another example. Think about the classical warfare and stuff. And so, you know, when the Americans, the Europeans settled the United States, they would build all these forts everywhere. And these forts were actually extremely vulnerable. You know, they put a big old wall around it. And, you know, in the old Europe, they built castles with moats, right? Well, what happens with castles and moats? Well, they besiege them or they encircle them and they starve them out. And eventually these castles and these forts would fall, inevitably. Now imagine, you know, the nomadic warriors. You could never catch them. They were always on the move, right? And I'm not saying that you should be on the move. I'm just saying that when the door is open, when you show your vulnerability, you are actually at your strongest. Because you can't be hurt anymore.
That's right.
If I tell you in this negotiation, if I tell you these are my sensitive points, these are the ones that are really important to me, and these are the ones I can give a little on, right? I've actually haven't given anything away. I've just given them a manual on how we can go reach a deal. I haven't given anything away. Now, if I say everything is really important and I can't negotiate anything, how weak am I there? Because now I'm like exposed everywhere. Because everything I give, I'm now weak. I'm now giving things away that I told I couldn't give away. And so by actually showing my cards, I became immutable. And I can just sit there and smile and I can say, no, you know, that's really, I already told you that, and I'll explain to you. I'm happy to explain why that's so important to me too. So you understand my rationale. It's not just me playing a game. I'll tell you why it's important to me. Now, if we can't meet a deal, if we can't meet deal terms, then that's okay. I accept that. I walk away. The person that winning in any negotiation, by the way, is always the person most willing to walk away. Always. Right? That's negotiations 101.
I was going to say this is a masterclass in negotiation.
But being vulnerable, and we see it not the wrong way, but I think we have this perception. We got to reframe some of these things. Let's take it again to a love relationship. Let's say for you and your wife, and there's something that's just really important to you, and it's like sensitive to you, you know, it means something to you, so you're vulnerable. But the moment you show up vulnerable and you say, you know, I just want to talk about this because it's important to me, and these are reasons why it's important to me, right? Now, if you're married with the wrong person, they will always slam the door closed. But at some point, then that's actually merciful too, because then you can just see clearly that, you know, we're just not on the same wavelength. We're not on the same frequency. We're not going in the same direction. We don't value the same things. But the moment you're vulnerable, what have you done? You've created the opportunity for your partner to show up for you, to actually show in an act of compassion, to show their love to you, which is actually a win-win, because they get to show how much they care, and you can actually receive like, wow. And guess what? The next time when the roles are reversed, right? Because that credit bank builds. The next time she comes to you and she says, you know, I know this is maybe, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, but I really want to share this with you. You're going to be 10 times more open to receive that. When she's just vulnerable and honest and you know, and sometimes, yeah, maybe you can't do it. And you just say, like, you know, I really hear you and I want to accommodate you, but for these reasons, that this is just, it crosses my boundaries or whatever. You know, you can have a conversation about these things. But if you're not willing to be vulnerable, if you're not willing to show your flank, you can't have any of these conversations.
Yeah. And it kind of, yeah, what you're saying right now, like I'm thinking, you know, like when you're at your vulnerable state, it helps the other person put their guards down and show you more compassion. And I think it helps, you know, getting this conversation helps with those, you know, who might be going through a situation whereby, you know, for example, they're not able to express their true self and they're holding back and they still don't get opportunities, right? The reason why you're not getting opportunities is because you're uptight, you're holding back, and people don't see, like you said, people won't come to you because you're short. So the more you let go, open up, the more people have access to you and share and show you more opportunities. I mean, I've seen this already. You know, I was talking to someone about in an interview. She said she was in an interview, and this is how she got the job. She was asked a question, and she was vulnerable because she stated why she needed the job, right? And this is something that they'll tell you in a real, you know, interview prep. Don't say these things because they will get in the way, you know. But she showed vulnerability there. This is, you know, and when she gave this example, and she finally got the job, she asked them, what was the reason, like, what is the thing that you saw in me that attracted me, you know, to you when you gave me the job? I said, because of that statement you said, that story you shared. And I think it's so powerful that when we embrace vulnerability, it opens doors. It almost like when we decide not to close doors, more doors are open.
100%. And there's a couple of different things here that I want to tie into. First of all, you are not in competition with anybody. There's one Amika. I cannot be Amika. I cannot even try to be you. You are in a business of one. You have no competition whatsoever. Neither do I. Nobody can do Robert Althuis like I can. Nobody can. I am truly unique. We are all truly unique, right? Now, the second thing that you can layer onto this is like, some things in life are going to be meant for you and some things are not.
Yeah.
So when you are turned down for a job that you really thought you loved to have, well, that wasn't your job. That wasn't meant for you. It just means there's something else for you. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you suck as a candidate. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing about you other than that you went to an interview and that one wasn't for you. But our mind tends to put all kinds of, well, I'm a loser. I'm never going to find a job. I'm never going to find a husband. I'm never going to find a wife. I'm never going to like be able to buy a house. I'm never like, we draw all these erroneous conclusions from what is just merely an experience in life. We went to a job interview. That wasn't the one. You move on. And you don't go into an interview and show that which you're not, because how you're going to do that when you actually show up for the job? You're going to now be an actor the rest of your life and act this character that you sold in the interview? Is that really what you desire? You think that's going to be a path to success in that company or in that business or for you? Because now you have to live a lie. So you might as well just show up as you, your unique you, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And you know, present it as well as you can. Obviously, you're interviewing for a job. And if it's a great fit, it will come to you. And if it's not, you go to another interview. But it means nothing about you. You are not a failure. That interview failed. But that does not mean you're a failure. Anybody that goes into anybody that lives life, you are going to meet more failures in life than successes. Because a lot of stuff you try in life doesn't quite work out. It does not mean you are a failure. It means that experience failed. There's a big difference. But we tend to reflect it back on us. Well, I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm never going to get out of this. I can't do this. I can't do that. Well, yeah, as soon as you say that to yourself, then you can't. You just created the ceiling for yourself. But you are never, by definition, a failure. Because you cannot fail in life, because the purpose of life is to grow and evolve. That's the only purpose in life. It's not to get a job or to get $1 million in your bank or any. Those are all like byproducts from stuff we do.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes those byproducts are great, and sometimes they're not so great. But the sole purpose in life is to grow and evolve, because that's what the universe is doing. And the universe is actually doing it through you, because you are just one expression of this universe. And that's undeniable, because we're all here in this universe, so we must be an expression of that, right? And the universe is only concerned with growth and evolution. The only thing it concerns about. And you can actually not help but grow and evolve, because every day you wake up, you learn something new about yourself, about life, about whatever, even how to make tea. I mean, it doesn't matter. You watch one YouTube video a day, you learn something new, so you're expanding. And so when you can get that baseline for yourself, like, hey, I can actually not screw up. I cannot screw this up. I'm just here frolicking on earth with form and matter, trying things out, learning and evolving myself, forever more refining the spiritual art that I express into all of creation. And I do it through jobs, I do it through relationships, I do it for building businesses, I do it for going on vacations, I do it through go hugging a tree. Doesn't matter. You're just growing and evolving. That's the only game spirit is playing. Now, the game man plays is all the stuff we see in the world. We build businesses, we make money, we have cars, fancier cars, whatever. You know, that's the game man plays. But that game plays out within the larger game that spirit plays, which is only concerned with growth and evolution. You just getting a little bit better today than you were yesterday. A little bit wiser, a little bit better, a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more loving. That's all. That's what this whole game of life is all about. And we do it through living here on Earth School with other people, through friendships, through families, through building our own family, through having kids, through building businesses, through having jobs, through getting diplomas, through learning a hobby, you know, to learn a music instrument. I mean, these are just ways we evolve and learn about ourselves. That's all it is. Now, when you can take that pressure off yourself, now you can start playing with this stuff. And this is really where the fun starts. Like, what if you're building your business, your dream career? What if you could make that just play? There was no pressure on it. How do you think that would look like? What energy would you bring into it if you can get to that place? And how do you think you would be creating from that place? Because now it's just fun and games. And yeah, we're playing for marbles, but the marbles are for fun. You know, so we could create a beautiful life for ourselves. Great. You know?
Hmm. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think, I know it's going to help those who are in their 20s, because I think the earlier you would get this, the better for our destiny, our future in the world. And, the audience in this podcast, we have from 2022, interestingly, 45 or so, but I'm very concerned about the young ones, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation because I think it's so important that we begin to get this, because what is happening out there now is people just trying to live a life that is based on what everyone else is saying but themselves. Like what everyone's saying, what the society says is the best course or the job that they should do, but not looking within.
Yeah.
Leads to my next question.
Tell me.
And I think this is also ties closely to what we're talking about, and that is for forgiving.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, both ourselves and others, right?
Right.
What are the advice you can offer that, for those who are
a powerful question. So a couple notions. First of all, you don't actually forgive for someone else. The first person you do it for is yourself. Because any grudge you hold, any judgment you hold, that other person might not even know that you have this grudge or this judgment. They might have no idea. But you carry this with you. And this is mental energy. This is again, you're allowing situations, experiences to squat in your mental real estate. And this is a negative vibration that you're allowing to have a home inside of you, because you give it energy by thinking about it. Because everything you resist persists. So you having this judgment, you having this grudge, you having this axe to grind, is actually you're the only one carrying it. The other person might be completely oblivious or simply doesn't care. Maybe they do care if you share it with them, right? But forgiveness is for you, so you can lighten the load and just move on with life. Because everything is just an experience in life. And at the very core, other than the wisdom that you can extract from it, like nectar, right? Every experience by itself is neutral. It's just an experience. And I know this is very hard when we start talking about molestation and rape and some of these, really atrocious offenses. But even that, if the victim carries this the rest of their lifetime, who are they hurting? If they cannot release this, they are bringing this into their next relationship. They're bringing this, they continue to live this over and over, right? And so this forgiveness is for you, first and foremost. Now, the second part about forgiveness, and this is a bit of a stretch maybe, but spiritually, this is how it works. And I use words like God or Creator, Spirit interchangeably. You can call it infinite intelligence. You can call it Brahman, infinite field. I don't care what you call it, right? Those are just linguistic labels. So use whatever you want, but I'll use God now. So God actually doesn't forgive, because God never judges. A forgiveness of any sort is precipitated by a judgment. You have to first judge something, someone, a situation, an experience in some way to be able to forgive it. If you omit any judgment on anything and can just attribute it to it being an experience from which you learned, grew, and evolved, no matter if you understood why it had to happen, sometimes we connect the dots in the rearview mirror. Sometimes it takes some refractionary period of a few months, years, or even 10 years. And then we look back and say, okay, I understand why that had to happen. Now I understand why that breakup had to be the way it was. Because otherwise I wouldn't have changed myself or my circumstances, and I wouldn't have ended up in this marriage that actually I'm much happier with, right? But we don't see that in the middle of this divorce or breakup or whatever. And so if there's no judgment, we don't have to forgive. We skip that part. And so if we can just experience life, and this is a pretty, high level of spiritual maturity, but if we can just look at life and say it was just an experience for me to grow and evolve, everything is always in perfect order, everything is always happening for my greatest growth, my greatest prosperity, my greatest evolution. Even when I don't understand right now, this moment, why did this had to happen, it will become clear to me when I need to see it. But I can know that this is how life operates. This is the design of life. And so I don't need to judge it. I don't know why that person did that to me. I don't know what triggered them to do this, right? And I can tell you if they violated you in any way, or we have someone like Putin creating wars, or whatever it might be, or politicians that are corrupt, or businessmen that are greedy, or whatever it might be. This always comes from a disconnection with divinity. Because when we're in connection with our divinity within, we couldn't possibly do this to someone else. And so there's a disconnection there. And we can just, I don't understand why that person got to that place. But for all you know, if you had lived the life Putin did, or maybe there's some, we call it a fug. I don't like calling it that way. But what if you were born in poverty, in a violent neighborhood, and all you've ever known is that fight for survival from the youngest age, and there was never any love in your household, and there was never any opportunity, there was never a safe place for you. Well, now you evolve and you become involved with gangs and drugs, and now you're in the juvenile system, which is, our penal system is also very violent and all that. And now, this person gets spit in their 20s, maybe out in society, and then they do something atrocious. And I'm not condoning the atrociousness of it. I'm just saying, maybe if you would have lived that life like that person did, what is to say you wouldn't have done the same thing? That you just didn't know anything else. You didn't know what love was because you didn't grow up with it. All you know is poverty, violence, people dying, no perceivable opportunities, no mentorship, no one telling you you can escape this in any way other than, becoming a gang member. And so when you start looking at life that way, you can get to this place like, I'm not going to judge it. It's just an experience. I don't know why this other person had to do this to me, but I don't need to know, because that's not my life to live. I need to live my life, and I need to let this go and just accept that this happened to me, and I am bigger than any one experience in my life. No matter no matter how awful that experience was, I am bigger than any one thing that happened to my life unless I hold on to it. Now, obviously, there's some violations that probably require some, therapy and healing. And I'm not saying that you can just, snap your fingers and move on and, you should just buckle up and go down the road. No, I think if, we get hurt in life, we get really, really damaged in life. And some of us experience awful, awful things. And then you need to just seek help. And work through that. Sometimes we need some help. We need some counseling. We need some healing, and we need to dedicate ourselves to that and find the people that can help us with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I went into therapy in 2017. I needed help. I couldn't figure it out by myself anymore. I couldn't get out of my rabbit hole. I was deeply depressed. I was borderline suicidal. I couldn't save myself. I needed help. We all sometimes get in life in these places where we need some help in some format, some form, right?
Right. Okay. That's a deep one. Now, to share our listeners, how can they develop, or what are the practices that you want to share that they can use to develop a deeper understanding of themselves?
Well, I mean, it's called Love and Truth. 650 pages. It's an ethos of being spiritual art. Everything I'm talking about in some form is in my book. But in all seriousness, if I can leave just one thought with your listeners and everybody, you know, you are so much more than you might think you are. And you are so much more powerful, and you're so much more magnificent. And the word magnanimous actually comes from Aristotle. And magnus means great, and animus means soul. And every single person is magnanimous, but we don't see it. And when we don't see our own greatness, our own capacity to rise and to overcome anything in life, if we don't see our own potential, it cannot come to fruition. And so if I can, you know, leave any inspiration with anybody, it's just know how fucking great you are, how much potential you have, how much you can shape your life and create your dreams. And if there's an intrinsically motivated dream in you, not what the world tells you to do and be, and you know, what you need to accomplish to be worth anything in the world. No, I mean this thing inside of you, this dream that you have, that you've had maybe since you were a little kid. And it doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's building a business, maybe it's painting, maybe it's being a homemaker, maybe it's being a father or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, right? But that intrinsically motivated dream. Now that is not just your dream. Because I promise you, and from my experience, just take it from me, there is something much larger that is always here, that is living through all of us. And that seed is for us to kind of put it in fertile soil and to nourish it. And maybe that means we need to get mastery in some skill or in some ability, or we need to learn something or get a diploma or whatever it might be, right? That's just getting mastery in the outside world. Those things are important because we need to get this seed to bloom, to grow. So when you get green sprouts, and then we get it to flower and blossom, and then eventually it's going to bear fruit. And this fruit is for you to harvest. But there's something bigger than you, providence there, that wants you to go to that seed in your heart. And so by definition, it's a benevolent universe. It's the biggest choice. Einstein said that, right? The biggest choice you make in life is either this is a benevolent or malignant universe. I promise you it's a benevolent universe. So it doesn't put a dream in you that you could not realize. So what does that mean? So we can know now that I somehow, even if I don't see it today, I have the gifts, talents, superpowers, and resources to realize this dream, even if I don't see them today. Because if it's an intrinsically motivated dream, this universe is not cruel. I just need to go on this journey to cultivate these gifts, to hone these skills, to excavate these superpowers, to find these resources, and that's the treasure hunt of life, right? And then I get to live this dream that's been planted inside of me, but actually something much bigger than us actually is living through us this experience. You are so incredibly powerful. You have no idea. Most people don't have the faintest idea how powerful they are. But we got to go on this journey. We gotta go on this journey of life.
That's right. Wow. That was powerful. I think, because I've had one episode before this recording, and yours just wrap it up for me today. Like, it's,
I hope. Sorry if I talk a lot, but I got a lot to say. So
it's a deeper. My conversation. The podcast is, I don't do 20 minutes. It's usually for those who really want to listen and grow, and you don't microwave wisdom. Like, you don't get microwave wisdom. It has to be cooked and baked. So my conversation is really longer. So And this is it. So thank you so much. Before you go, we do the final 3 questions that I ask my guest.
Yeah.
You can answer in 1 word for each of these questions.
All right.
First question is, what is the worst advice you've received when it comes to living your true self or living your best life?
I'm going to answer it this way. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. The worst advice is, you know, just fluff it. Just kind of, you know, you should do everything you do 100%. 100% to your ability. And if you only have 80% that day, you do 100% of your 80% you have that day. But the way you do anything is the way you do everything. The way you make your bed is the way you do your business. The way you clean your car is the way you clean your mental real estate.
Is that a worst advice or a good advice?
Well, I mean, it's basically the opposite of, like, anybody that says, like, just fluff it, just, you know, anything less than 100% is bad advice. You should do everything 100% to your ability. Because it will translate in every single area of your life.
Yeah. So in order, in essence, the worst advice is just go about life, and you know, like what would be, or you know.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, the worst advice is, you know, it's okay to cut corners. I don't believe in cutting corners.
Right.
I don't think it works. Don't get obsessed with excellence either, because that's a futile effort. Or perfection. Excellence is actually what you should strive for. But perfection is a futile effort, right? There's no such thing as perfection. That's an illusionary, utopian concept.
That's
but
right.
everything you do, do it to the best of your ability. So any advice to do less than that is bad advice.
Bad advice. Second question. If we had to look back 5 years from now, what were the things that you would advise someone that has changed the game for you now?
I think really internalizing that nothing in the outside world makes me a failure.
Nothing in the outside world makes me a failure. That's powerful.
There's failures galore in the outside world, also in my life still. But none of them make me a failure. It just means I tried something and it didn't work out. That's very different.
That's right. Okay. Last question. What was... I'm trying to put this question together.
All right.
And what would you say is the moment where you realize that, or what were the guiding values that you had to hold to live this life that you're living right now? Like, what are the guiding values that hold this entire concept of the game of life of love and truth? What would you say those values are? One value.
I'm responsible and accountable for everything that's in my life. Without accountability and responsibility, we have zero power. Because what I'm saying is I can't change it. I'm just, you know, the environment is dictating what my life looks like.
Accountability and responsibility.
The moment I take 100% accountability and 100% responsibility, I reclaim my creative power. I'm basically saying I create my life. And so everything that is in my life today, in some way or another, I've created it. Even if I don't know how I did it, it doesn't matter. I am working from the core principle that in some way I created it, even if I don't know how I created it. Because there's lots of stuff that shows up in our life and we don't really know why that happened. But it still shows up in our life. And if I don't take responsibility for it or accountability, then I basically have no power to change it.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for being on the podcast. It felt like an immersion session. I didn't know how to describe it, but it felt like I was
I'm
going
going to
to.
take it as a compliment.
It felt like I was going to a retreat.
I almost want to give you like a towel and that you want to fall over, like I've beaten you into submission with all my stuff. But anyway, I really hope there were some nuggets in there for some people. And even if you listen to the whole hour and you just take one thing from it, that's valuable, right? We don't need to consume the whole hour and all of it needs to resonate. Just pick up what's for you, and dismiss all the rest.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to have all the information for Robert on his website, his LinkedIn account, and all those places you can follow him, and also be able to order his book. We'll have that in the show notes, and also on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much for listening. If you benefited from this session and this podcast episode, leave us a comment. Let us know what exactly resonated with you in this episode, and share with your friends. If it benefited you, share with someone else, right? Thank you so much for being a part of our community. Remember, your growth is personal. No one is responsible for your personal growth but you. Until we come your way in the next episode, stay blessed and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.